Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another edition of the Cons Cast, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about Blood and Truth for the PlayStation VR. This title was sent to me by PlayStation Portugal so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. Now this is not a full-on review because at this point in time I haven't finished the game yet. However, I have played enough to get a good grasp of the mechanics and what to expect of the gameplay that I'm comfortable enough sharing my opinion with you. So, starting things up as I tend to do with these videos, I'd like to talk about the visuals, which is the department where Blood and Truth does not disappoint. The visuals are pretty good for PlayStation VR standards. What I mean by that, it is that, PlayStation VR is somewhat limited in terms of its hardware capabilities, and as such, they need to prioritize frame rate over visuals at all times to make sure that nobody is getting sick from a choppy frame rate. For those of you that are not familiar with VR, if you try to play a game in VR that has a choppy frame rate, you're going to get super sick super fast. And this is definitely not the case with Blood and Truth because the frame rate is solid and the visuals are still good enough to keep the immersion going, particularly with the characters that show up on screen at any given time, which are represented by real-life actors, and the acting is done by those actors, and it's actually pretty solid. The facial expressions, the voice acting, all of that is really, really good and does contribute a whole lot to the immersion. So when it comes to the visuals, they're pretty solid, but again, they're not going to be blowing anybody's minds because, they're VR visuals, and it is what you've come to expect out of the PlayStation VR. In terms of sound, it is very, very good. I really like the gun sounds. I like that you're able to detect pretty much where everything is coming from. The 3D sound is pretty much solid. And to top things off, I really, really dig the soundtrack. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show you guys all that much of that soundtrack. I might actually have to mute a lot of the audio tracks because I do believe it is licensed music, and as such, you guys know if I put that stuff on YouTube, it's the quickest way to get your video utterly destroyed and copyright strikes and all of the terrible bad things will fall upon me. So there is a high chance that I will not be able to put an audio track to the gameplay. But just know that the soundtrack is pretty damn sweet. So anyway, first, before we begin, there are two ways that you can control your character in the game, which is by using two move controllers or by using a DualShock 4. All of the gameplay that I've done was using the two move controllers, which is clearly the way that this game was designed. You can use DualShock 4, is not going to be nearly as immersive because I don't actually think that you'll be able to aim two guns in different directions, and that is potentially one of the biggest things that to me was when they gave me the option to dual wield guns. It is just really cool because you're able to, I'm going to aim this gun this way, aim this gun that way, and it just feels fantastic. However, the game is a rail shooter, which is why you can actually play it with two moves. You don't really need like an analog stick to move your character or anything like that. The way that movement works is they give you a couple of options as to where you can make your character go to, and then you just press the T button on the move controller and your character goes there, and then from there you start shooting people, reloading your guns, doing all of that stuff. At the end of the day, this is a linear story rail shooter. This is what you can expect out of Blood and Truth. And they have no qualms about what type of game it is. It is, again, it's not a game where you're going to be like moving your character with an analog stick and full freedom of movement. Nothing like that. It is a rail shooter, gallery shooter. The whole point of it is to make you feel like an action hero in the middle of an action movie. And it does succeed at that in multiple occasions. However, there are other occasions where I feel it doesn't do that great a job. We'll get into that. It is not super perfect, but I can tell you right now that even though it has a bit of a rough start there at the beginning because they start you off with just one pistol, and I felt like just the one pistol didn't really bring a whole lot to the table. The moment they unlocked dual wielding, that's when I went, oh, hells yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, imagine dual wielding like a submachine gun on one hand and then a friggin' sawed-off shotgun on the other one. Like, that was beautiful. Like when I started doing that, I was like, oh, now I'm getting it. Now I'm getting into it. Before that, it was a little bit more, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But yeah, now there are a couple of things that I would like to criticize here a little bit. Now the game is designed with you playing sitting down. I guess this is because most people want to be comfortable when they're playing a long VR game. But in my opinion, I wish the game was designed around you standing up. Now, I'm sure that you can still stand up and you will get, mixed results with that because of the calibration of all the VR devices and all of that stuff. You're going to get a couple of mixed results because the Move is a little bit of an outdated technology. They've been around for quite some time. As a matter of fact, the Move that I have was from the PlayStation 3 days. So yeah, the tracking in there is not the best. It is good. It's as good as any other VR game, basically, on PSVR. But, you do kind of notice that, oh man, if this thing was a little bit more precise, it could be so much more fun. Not to mention the limited angles of motion that you have. You really feel those in this game because a lot of times you'll be sitting at a desk, for instance, and there's drawers in the desk, and you'll go in to open the drawers, and it's like, oh, you move the Move out of the range that the thing can detect, and your hand just glitches, and you're like, oh, come on, just open the drawer. There's a lot of that. And this is with me actually moving a bunch of stuff around in the office to just have this whole area just dedicated for VR, to give it the best possible conditions imaginable, to have as much space around me as possible, to have the camera at a good distance with a good angle. Despite doing all of that, I still felt a lot of limitations with the stuff that I could interact with, like drawers and picking up items and stuff like that. So that is something that will break your immersion from time to time. But at the end of the day, I don't really think that is a deal breaker, because when you're doing those interactions is not really when the game is at its finest. The game's at its finest when you're dual wielding guns, shooting the crap out of everybody that's showing up. Now that is a whole lot of fun. Now, one of the problems that I've noticed is that reloading your gun is a little bit awkward because they use the same button to shoot and reload. So a lot of the times you'll end up shooting instead of reloading your gun. And the way that it works is if you run out of ammo on your right hand weapon, you're going to bring your left hand move to your chest, hit the fire button, and then drag it into the other weapon so that you put the clip in there. And it works. The problem is that a lot of times if you don't put the Move controller exactly where it needs to be to pick up the ammo, you're going to fire because it uses the same button as firing, which is why I wish, look, there's so many buttons on this Move controller. There's literally a ton of buttons in here. Why can't you use X to pick up the bullets, or square, or triangle, or circle, or select? I mean, mine is so old it even has the select button. I assume that the new Moves have share buttons or whatever. There's a ton of buttons in here. Use them, please. Don't just oh yeah, use the trigger to shoot. I've done so many shots close to my chest that I always get disappointed. I'm God damn it, because I'm trying to reload my submachine gun and I fire my sawed-off shotgun, which only has 2 shots, which means, well, now I got to reload the sawed-off shotgun as well, and then I fire the submachine gun. So that stuff happens a lot, and I really do wish they used a different button for that stuff. I think that was completely, it was a needless thing. I don't understand how they kind of didn't think about, oh, we should probably use a different button. It is, however, cool the way that you are able to store guns, because you have 2 holsters onto the side, and then you have 2 more holsters onto the back, which means that you can carry up to 4 guns at any given time. And it is very intuitive the way that you pick them up. It's you bring your Move controller down into your hip and you pick up a gun from the hip, or you put the gun back down and then you bring your Move controller to your back, hit the trigger then, and you can pull out another gun. You can pull out a shotgun from your back, you can pull out the submachine gun from your back. So it is cool that you're able to just mix and match all of these different weapons. And there's even buttons that allow you to play with them and juggle them around. I didn't really do all that much though, so I probably don't have footage of it, but it is a lot of fun. There's also a mechanic, even though there's no gauges on screen, so I really don't know how often I can use this mechanic, but there's a mechanic that you can press both the T buttons on the Move controllers, and that makes everything go in slow motion, and you can get some special shots off, particularly when you have heavy enemies with helmets and stuff like that. That becomes very useful, but it's just one of those things, the amount of variety that you get when you are doing gunplay, that is where this game excels. And then the problem becomes with the fact that the game is also trying to tell a story. And, that is important, and the story has been interesting up until this point. But the thing about the story is that there's also way too many exposition cutscenes, and cutscenes where it's oh, here's a couple of items that you can play around with. And it's dude, just take me to the next shooting gallery sequence, because that's where the game really shines, you know. And I understand they're trying to tell a story, and maybe that's like a personal thing to me because I'm more of a gameplay over story type of guy, but it just felt like some of the cutscenes dragged, and it does the age-old thing of like, oh, there's this sequence where you're being interrogated, and now there's this flashback, and then there's another sequence where you're being interrogated by the same dude, and now there's another flashback. It does that for a good long while. As a matter of fact, I've only now gotten past that because you do get to a point where it's like, okay, now you're in present day, and now the story is going to actually start moving forward. And I almost just wish just tell the story from the beginning. Like, I don't like these flashback sequences. Again, that could be a personal thing, but that's the way that I feel. So overall, it's like, if you're okay with having some of these longer exposition times where they're just telling a story and you're not really doing all that shooting or even all that much interacting, particularly at the start, there's like a big long section where you go from an interrogation into seeing an event that happened and you're just sitting there not really doing anything. And that did feel like it was a little bit too long. But hopefully the pacing improves moving forward, and I think that it is going to improve because I've been definitely getting more and more shooting and less exposition, so that's been something that I've been enjoying a whole lot more. But overall, I do think it is a pretty fun game. It's just, it has these things where it's like sometimes the interactions don't feel great, the reloading feels a little bit awkward, and you got the exposition stuff. But it is a pretty unique experience that I haven't really seen before in the console. Then again, I only just now bought my second move specifically to play this game, so, you know, maybe there's other titles that do it, but Blood and Truth did feel like a really fun one because it's not just about the shooting being good and being fun. It is because of the sequences that they do. Everything is like this big action set piece of you jumping through a window, or you know, a crane goes through a building and everything's exploding around you, and you're just like, oh, and massive explosions, and even you placing detonators. There's also actions if you like picking locks and stuff and disabling security stuff and whatever. But it is a fun game. Hands down, I have fun with it, and I plan on playing it some more. It's just, I still have to do VR on short bursts because I haven't played VR for a good long while, so I tend to get VR sick. But yeah, that's Blood and Truth. What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoy my content, do remember to hit the subscribe button and press the bell notification icon. Thank you very much for watching. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.